are such a genuine gem, thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, but today's video is about Amber Wilde's unsolved disappearance. Now this is one that has gone on for over 20 years, and the crazy part is most believe they know who the killer is based off of a clue found in Amber's diary. And so it's just insane to me that this case has still been unsolved, even though so many clues are there to point them in the right direction. By the way, I post so much content like this, so if you do enjoy true crime or listening to these victims' stories, then I would really appreciate your support by subscribing down below. I also have a Patreon and I have merch if you would like to check those out as well. Now let's get back to this story. You see, it was 1998 in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Amber Wilde was 19 years old and had just transferred from a community college to the University of Wisconsin. But 3 weeks later, she would go missing. You see, Amber Wilde grew up with a younger sister and a single father, and it was really a happy household. Her father described her as the type of girl that anyone could talk to for 30 minutes and it would change your life. She was also, appeared to be a very mature old soul and would even ask her father at a very young age if he had paid the rent, if he needed any help, without him ever having to ask her to do so. As Amber got older, she planned to be a doctor working with children, so a pediatrician, and she was working really hard to get there. She was doing work study along with classes, student government, but she was also really good at balancing everything very nicely. She was also an excellent planner, which was said to contribute to her success, and her family believed she could do anything that she put her mind to. Then it was September 23rd of 1998, and Amber was 19 at this time, and she was driving her car along the road when she actually got into a minor car accident. She had rear-ended the car in front of her and ended up hitting her head on the windshield, but they got out, the two drivers, and there wasn't too much damage, so they exchanged numbers and they parted ways, thinking that they would communicate later on. Amber was left with quite a horrible headache and decided to go to the medical department on campus to just get everything checked out, make sure she was okay, and they told her that she probably had a concussion and that she should have somebody check on her throughout the day just to make sure she was okay. She basically enlisted her father in this role, and so they talked throughout the day. When she got back to her apartment that evening, her and the other driver she had gotten into a car accident with, they got on the phone, they talked for a little while about the repairs, they got it all worked out, and then she called her father to ask him to call her in the morning to make sure she was up for class. She feared that she wouldn't wake up in time to make it, and she was one who was always a planner, always on time, and so she really asked her father to help her out, and that's exactly what her father did. He called the next morning to make sure she was awake, but Amber didn't answer, and he continued to try to call her, maybe thinking that she had just overslept, that she didn't hear the phone. So he kept calling, and Amber wasn't answering, and at that point her father had to go to work, so he told Amber's grandmother to go ahead and keep calling her for him. At this point, her class period was at 1 p.m. and it had already passed. She also had an eye doctor's appointment that she had missed. So then they called the school to make sure that Amber had gone to class that day, to just make sure, which they told them that she hadn't been there. And that's when they knew something was very wrong. By that evening, they still had no communication with Amber, and Amber's father was getting very worried and ended up driving all the way to campus to check out her apartment. It was locked, but thankfully he had a key, so he went inside and saw nothing out of the ordinary, but Amber wasn't there either, and her car was gone. At this point, he actually called the police and reported her as missing. And that's when the search began for the 19-year-old Caucasian female with brown hair and brown eyes who stood at 5'4" to 5'6", weighing approximately 135 pounds. At the time, Amber had 8 piercings in each ear, and each piercing had a small gold hoop in them. Other than that, no clues were really found as to where she could have gone until about a week later. That is when a dark gray 4-door 1988 Subaru GL was found. And that was Amber's car. It was unlocked and abandoned in Green Bay near the Lambeau field. Amber was not in the car, but her purse was found in the trunk and her cell phone was found still plugged into the charger. The car keys were also still in the ignition, and with this there was no real sign of foul play and not much to look into, but it was actually Amber's father who found something that was very much out of place for Amber's car. And that was the fact that her seat, the front driver's seat, was pushed all the way back. And Amber's father knew that she had extremely short legs and always had the seat almost touching the steering wheel when she was driving. And there was no way she would have been able to touch the pedals with it so far back. And that is when investigators knew that there were one of two options. One, that somebody had intentionally pushed it back to put them off their trail, or two, that somebody much taller than Amber had driven that car. Investigators also believed that this car had not been there for the whole week she had been missing, but once again, there was another thing found by Amber's father that was very strange. You see, Amber had gotten an oil change 2 days prior to going missing, and they had, of course, wrote down the mileage of the odometer at the time. And looking at it then, a week later, when it didn't seem like it was driven out of Green Bay, there were 900 extra miles put on it. 900 unaccounted for miles. Nothing was adding up, and investigators knew that Amber had not disappeared on her own. There had been some sort of foul play, and they began to hand out missing persons posters at Lambeau Field, but they were having no luck in finding any information until they found Amber's diary, which told them so much information on what they needed to know in only 2 words: "I'm pregnant." And it was true. She had already actually told her family, her aunt first, and then the rest of her family, admitting that the pregnancy was accidental, but that she was going to keep it. Her aunt had even offered to take care of the baby after she had it so Amber could go back to school, and Amber really had it all planned out. But what she couldn't plan for was how her supposed baby daddy would react. Amber claimed that the baby daddy was a 6'5", 21-year-old man named Matt Snyder, who was a construction worker at the time, and he did not like this news. He, in fact, asked Amber to get rid of the baby at one point, and if she didn't, he would harm himself, or after she had the baby, she would never see it. How did investigators know all of this? Well, once again, Amber's diary told them in detail everything that had went on, and one of the entries even said that Amber confronted a girl named Heidi about her pregnancy. That sounds weird, to confront a girl about your pregnancy, but Heidi was Matt's fiance. Matt was not going to tell his fiance of his mistress and their baby, so Amber did it herself, as well as writing a letter to Matt's mother telling her about the pregnancy as well. Matt was furious, or that is what Amber wrote in her diary after she had done all of this. And you see, Amber and Matt had met at a party in May, and apparently this is where they began cheating on Matt's fiance. And this would be the exact time that would make sense for Amber to be pregnant, considering she was 4 months pregnant at the time she disappeared. And this was actually confirmed by a doctor who did an ultrasound. But when investigators questioned Matt Snyder about all of this, he said that he did not have a sexual relationship with Amber, and in fact barely knew her, and had only seen her a few times at a local restaurant. Matt's fiance said that Amber was obsessed with Matt and was making it all up. But when investigators started looking into Amber's phone records, they knew that they had Matt on something, because how was he going to explain 60 calls between the two of them if they barely knew each other? And after looking back through Amber's diary, where she cataloged basically all of the calls and what they were talking about, they could really connect the calls with the dates and knew that most of the calls were actually about her pregnancy. Through all of this questioning, Matt showed no concern as to where Amber was, what had happened to her, if anything had happened to her. But this case was now being looked into as a homicide, and because of this, they were looking for where her body possibly could have been dumped. And strangely enough, at the time of her disappearance, Highway 29, right through the middle of Green Bay, had been under serious construction. And guess who was working on it? Matt Snyder. Investigators have searched several of the fields surrounding the highway as well as the Snyder family farm, with Amber's aunt watching over it every single one, but so far they have not found anything. And in 2013, when new investigators took over Amber's case, they were looking into the people interviewed at her case and found many lies that they had told, because they also had witness statements that were proving that these confessions from these people saying that they had nothing to do with it were untrue. And so they knew that they had some inconsistencies with the interviews, but it was very hard to get people, especially from 20 years prior, to want to talk to them, especially when they couldn't force them to because they had no evidence. But in 2016, Matthew John Snyder was officially named a suspect in Amber's case, except for he has never come up with an alibi. He won't take a polygraph test. He now won't talk to police or anyone about Amber's case, and there is no evidence to actually arrest him to this day. The FBI has been involved in Amber's case, but so far it is still unsolved. Every year, her family on September 23rd releases balloons to the heavens, and they say that Amber's memory is still fresh in their minds, and it's really hard not to get their hopes up every time new information comes out. The new detectives in this case believe that actually more than one person could be involved, and they actually had a secret hearing where they forced one of Matt Snyder's friends to come in and provide a statement about what he was doing that night, his alibi. And his alibi was that he didn't know what he was doing that night, but he was most likely not home. One theory that kept coming up as I was researching in my own mind was, what if Matt's fiance had helped him, Heidi? What if they had both told Amber they wanted to meet, they wanted to discuss this like civil people, because Amber had already talked to Heidi, and so they did so, and then they did something to Amber together. And did her concussion from the previous day have anything to do with it? Could she have possibly not been in the right mind, not been super aware of her surroundings at this time? Could things have been fuzzy? Could she not have been, able to fight back if they were trying to attack her? But I'd love to hear your theories on this case down below. And Amber was actually going to name her baby Alexandria. If it was a girl, they hadn't yet known what gender it was. But in her honor, Amber's cousin named her baby Alexandra. This case may be old, but I still think it has a huge possibility of being solved, especially if somebody knows something about Matthew Snyder and exactly what he did that night or that day. And so if you know any information, please contact the Green Bay Police Department at 920-448-3221, because I truly do think that this case still has the opportunity to be solved, and her family deserves that. Please make sure to share this case or this video if you would like to get her story out. And don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.